You know, the Book of Revelation, it's probably one of the most debated, most mysterious books in all of history, right? For centuries, people have been trying to decode it, terrified by it, but what if? What if we've been looking at the whole thing completely wrong?
So let me just throw this out there. What if the end of the world already happened? I mean, what if that huge, world shattering apocalypse in Revelation isn't something that's going to happen, but something that took place nearly 2,000 years ago?
And look, it's no wonder this book is so intimidating. I mean, the imagery is just, wow. You've got terrifying beasts, dragons, plagues, fire. It's the stuff of nightmares, really. These visions have haunted people for generations, making everyone wonder if all that is waiting for us just around the corner.
Okay, so to really get this different perspective, we need a key. But it's not a key to the future, it's actually a key to the past. We're going to try to unlock Revelation by putting on a new pair of glasses, so to speak, a first century lens.
And this really lays it all out, doesn't it? On the one hand, you have what most people think. Revelation is all about some future Antichrist, a big global apocalypse, stuff that hasn't happened yet. But on the other hand, there's this other view, the 70 AD view. And it says this was a prophecy about something very specific, the complete and utter destruction of Jerusalem and its temple way back then. Now, here's the absolute linchpin of this whole idea. For this to work, you have to believe the book was written before 66 AD. See, it wasn't supposed to be some cryptic blueprint for 2,000 years in the future. It was an urgent, flashing red light warning to the early Christians that something massive was about to go down, that judgment was coming, and it was coming soon.
All right, so if this whole thing is about a real historical event, you'd think there would be some clues, right? Maybe a timeline? Well, that brings us to our first big piece of evidence, because it seems there is a hidden clock in the prophecy, and it's ticking.
And what's fascinating is that this same time frame pops up over and over again. It's just said in different ways. You'll see 42 months. Then you'll see 1,260 days. Then this cryptic phrase, a time times and a half a time. You do the math, it all comes out to exactly the same thing. 3.5 years. Kind of specific, right?
And here is where it gets really interesting. When you take that 3.5-year prophetic clock and lay it over actual history, boom, it lines up almost perfectly with the First Jewish-Roman War. That war kicked off with a great revolt in the middle of 66 AD and ended with the absolute obliteration of Jerusalem in 70 AD. The timeline is a near-perfect match.
Okay, I know what you're thinking. Timelines are one thing, but what about all the super weird stuff? The crazy symbolism? Let's tackle that head on. Let's take one of the most memorable and frankly terrifying images from the book, that locust army from Revelation 9. Let's see if we can unmask it. So John describes these locusts, right? But look at the details. They have crowns like gold. Well, what did a Roman soldier's helmet look like? A big golden crest. They had faces of men and breastplates of iron, just like Roman soldiers in their iron armor. The sound they made was like many chariots. You can just imagine the thunderous sound of a whole legion marching. And those stings in their tails, that's a pretty powerful metaphor for the Roman javelin, the pilum, isn't it? When you put it side by side, the parallels are, well, they're pretty hard to ignore. And the prophecy doesn't just describe what they look like, it describes the pain they inflict. It says their torment was like a scorpion's sting, not a quick death, but this agonizing, drawn-out suffering. And, when you read the actual historical accounts of what the siege of Jerusalem was like, that description becomes chillingly, horribly accurate. And here's another one of those incredible details. The prophecy says that this torment from the locust army would last for 5 months. So you have to ask, historically, how long did that final, brutal siege of Jerusalem actually last? You guessed it, 5 months. It's another one of these moments where the prophetic timeline and the historical reality just click.
So this raises a big question. If Revelation was a warning, what was the point? Was it just to say, hey, disaster is coming, good luck? No. The point of a warning is to give people a chance. It wasn't just about predicting destruction, it was about providing a way out. And that brings us to maybe the most famous number in the whole book, 144,000. So who were they, and what part did they play in all this? Well, in this historical view, that number isn't meant to be taken literally. It's symbolic. It represents the whole community of believers at the time, Jews and Gentiles who followed Christ. These were the servants of God, who were metaphorically sealed or marked for protection. They were the ones the warning was for, the ones who had to get out before it was too late. And this wasn't a new idea for them. They'd been given a very specific heads up years before. Jesus himself had told his followers, look, when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, that's it. That's the final sign. Don't wait, don't pack, just flee to the mountains.
So the million-dollar question is, did they ever get that signal? Did they get a chance to escape? Unbelievably, history says yes. It's amazing, really. In 66 AD, the Roman general Cestius Gallus had Jerusalem completely surrounded. It looked like the end. But then, and historians to this day are still scratching their heads about this, he just retreated for no clear reason. This bizarre move was the exact window of opportunity they were told to watch for. The Christians saw the sign, remembered the warning, and they got out. The historian Josephus even wrote that they fled the city as from a sinking ship. They escaped right before the final, terrible war sealed the city's fate.
Okay, so let's say all of this is true. Let's say Revelation's prophecies were fulfilled in 70 AD. Does that mean the book is just an old history lesson with no meaning for us today? Absolutely not. It just changes how we look at it. It gives us a whole new way to understand how prophecy might actually work.
And this brings us to a really important idea called a prophetic type. Basically, a type is a real historical event that also serves as a pattern or maybe a foreshadowing of things to come. So just because this all went down in the first century, it doesn't mean it's a one-and-done deal. It could be a blueprint for understanding other moments of judgment throughout history.
You know the old saying, history repeats itself? Well, maybe it's more like history rhymes. The same basic patterns, a warning, a coming judgment, a way of escape, these things can play out again and again in different ways. By understanding how this ancient prophecy was fulfilled, it gives us a kind of framework. It helps us recognize the pattern if or when it starts to unfold again.
And that really leaves us with one final, pretty big question to think about, doesn't it? If what happened back then is a pattern for how these things work, it kind of forces us to look at our own world and ask, what are the signs of our times? If history is a pattern, what warnings should we be watching for today?